Talk Zone presents the Geek Speak Radio Show with your hosts, Henry and Romo. Your top spot for everything entertainment and pop culture, including TV, movies, comics, casting news, and more. Now, here are your hosts, Henry and Romo.
Perfect way to start off Back to the Future Day.
Yes.
Had to start off with Michael J. Fox, Marty McFly, of course.
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd is also important to this.
Doc Brown.
But it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this person on the phone right now. That would be Mr. Bob Gale, writer, producer of the Back to the Future movies. Bob.
I'm here.
Welcome to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. First, well, actually, I'm going to let my co-host...
I need to thank you for making this wonderful film. It's part of my childhood. It's pretty much, I've learned a lot from the film itself. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, and they put you on the radio anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you hear that everywhere you go. Again, can you believe it's been 25 years already?
No, it's unbelievable to me. Because if somebody came to me back in 1985 and said, "Hey, Bob, you know what you're going to be doing 25 years from now? You're going to be doing interviews about Back to the Future." I would have said, "Get out of town." It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember just going there. There used to be a theater here down where the studio is now, and I went there when I was I think I was 12 at the time when it first came out, and movie tickets back then were like I think $3-4. Yeah. So you can tell it's a long time ago. And one of the things I've talked about this before on the air. One of the things I really like about Back to the Future is my dad was never really a sci-fi fan. I've been to the name of the show, a geek. I've been a geek not only with this movie, with everything else since I was born, really. But my dad and we really bonded over this one because I actually took him to see it, and we started reminiscing and telling me stories about his childhood. So that's why Back to the Future means so much to me. Well,
you hit upon something really, really great with that because to this day at the video store they don't know where to put it in the aisle. Is it comedy? Is it science fiction? Is it fantasy? Is it family? Is it adventure? And it's all those things. And your dad can enjoy it not being a sci-fi fan because it's not really the sci-fi elements of it take a back seat to the human story.
Yeah.
And it is. It connects with everybody, every generation, not just here, all over the world, because it captures that thing that all people have where when they're about 8 or 9 years old, where they suddenly understand the concept that, my God, my parents were once children. Which is really a pretty hard thing to get your childhood head around. And then the next thing that you have to get your head around, once you understand how sex works, you're appalled to think that your parents actually did that. So the idea that you could witness your parents on their first date and see your young parents as sexual beings, there's something that is very captivating about that concept, and I think that's one of the reasons that the movie just took off then and is still resonant today.
Yeah, these 25 years later. So when you started writing the movie, the story actually, how did you avoid, because, it's a time travel story, obviously, so how did you avoid any comparisons that were going to be made to H.G. Wells' Time Machine? Because that's, the greatest time travel story ever.
Well, what we did with Back to the Future and where we were able to break some of the sort of unwritten rules of time travel, which is don't change anything or you'll regret it, right, is that we created our own separate history for the McFly family that has nothing to do with the history that everybody else in the world knows. And Marty ends up being an inadvertent time traveler. He didn't plan on going back to 1955. It's an accident that he's there. It's an accident that he runs into his parents. All this stuff is an accident. All he's trying to do is get everything back the way it was. He's not trying to do anything other than to save his own existence and get home. So we're able to do some things with the space-time continuum by putting that frame of reference on it that you can't do in a lot of other time travel movies. And the other time travel movies, it was always about history, knowing, there was the final countdown in the 70s or the 80s where some guys go back and try to stop Pearl Harbor from happening. Well, they can't. They're going to fail. They're going to fail because how are we not going to have Pearl Harbor? So that was the big revelation that we have. If we invent our own history, we can mess around with it, and it'll be cool.
Was the time machine always going to be a DeLorean, or did you design something else?
No, in the original draft, it was a chamber. It was a time chamber. It was a cross between a shower stall and a refrigerator. And the original ending of the movie took place at a nuclear test site where they literally had to harness the radioactivity from an atomic test to power the time machine. And one day, Bob Zemeckis, we're in pre-production on all this, and Bob Zemeckis said, "You know what? It'd make a whole lot more sense if it was if it was mobile, if it was a car, and it would be even cooler if it was a DeLorean, and then we could use the gull-wing door to do this gag where they think it's a spaceship in the 1950s." As soon as he said, I knew he was absolutely right. So we changed it to a DeLorean, and then on the new Blu-ray set, or if you don't have a Blu-ray player, get the new standard definition set. There's a new special feature that shows the storyboards that we did for the old nuclear test site sequence with an animatic with music behind it, and you get a kind of an interesting look at what the ending to the movie would have been like if Universal had given us more money. And in one of those curious, fascinating paradoxes of blessings in disguise, the fact that we didn't have as much money as we would have liked to make the movie meant that we had to be more creative about how we used our money. And that sequence was a location sequence out in the desert. It was very expensive. We would have had to build all kinds of stuff. And when they said, you got to cut $1 million out of the budget, guys, that's what we cut. And so let's do something more controllable with a set that we already have. And we knew we had the back lot. So we invented the whole clock tower thing with the lightning to solve a budgetary problem.
Yeah, speaking of the lightning, who came up with the 1.21 gigawatts? Was that you or was that Bob Zemeckis?
The fact is, we were researching it. We called up an electrical engineer to find out how much energy is generated by a lightning bolt. And that's about accurate. And he pronounced, most people would pronounce it gigawatt, and the guy we spoke to called it a gigawatt, which is also correct. It comes from the Greek prefix for gigantic, gigos. But we never heard it either way, because this was before anybody was thinking in those kinds of terms. And so I misspelled it in the script as J-I-G-O, gigawatt, because that's the way I heard the guy say it. So, but that's about how much energy a bolt of lightning actually does produce.
And that one typo actually is one of the most memorable lines in the movie. Now, what do you remember from Michael J. Fox's first day of shooting?
I'll tell you, it's interesting you asked me that, because somebody once asked me recently about what was my most memorable moment of shooting the first movie, and it was the first night when Michael came to the set. We were shooting out at Pointe Hills Mall, out in the city industry outside of L.A., and he came to the set and started being Marty McFly. And everybody was so overjoyed and relieved to really get a sense that, oh, wow, this is going to work. He is Marty McFly. He is the perfect guy to play this part. So I just remember being so overjoyed at his comedic ability and what he was bringing to the part.
Yeah, I agree. Michael J. Fox, to me, is Marty McFly. How was your experience working with Eric Stoltz?
Eric was professional, but he just came from a different school of acting. He was sort of a method actor. He made everybody call him Marty all the time. He had to wear the wardrobe home every night as a way of him getting into the character. He stayed up all night to prepare for Marty McFly, having stayed up all night to go be out at the mall. So he had some different sensibilities as an actor than Bob and I were used to in the comedies that we'd done prior.
I played an interview with Michael just before you came on, and he mentions that to him it felt like Eric just didn't have that comedic timing that was necessary for the role. Did you and Robert Zemeckis see that?
Yeah, well, look, that's the reason why we replaced him. Bob cut together the 5 weeks of footage that we had done so far, and the comedy just wasn't playing the way we thought it should play, and it really it really bothered him. It bothered us. Obviously, it had to be pretty seriously a serious concern, or we wouldn't have taken such an insane step of saying, you know what, we're going to junk $3.5 million, $4 million worth of filming and start all over again.
Yeah. Were you there the day that you had to be given the bad news?
I was there every day. But I wasn't in the room. I wasn't in the trailer. Both Neil Canton and I, Neil, the other producer, we told Bob we're happy to be in there with you. He said, no, this should be something that a director does with his actor. And he said that Eric took it surprisingly well, and there you go.
The rest is history, as we say.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're talking to Bob Gale, who's a writer and producer of the Back to the Future movies. We'll continue the conversation in just a little bit. We'll get more into the movie and maybe get some behind-the-scenes stories, so don't go anywhere.
Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.